Late Thursday night, I walked toward my son Marcus's study to thank him for the cruise gift. The door was slightly open. I heard his voice on the phone, cold and calculating. He said the ticket was one way only. I would not be coming back. Once I was gone, everything would be theirs. My blood turned to ice. I backed away silently into the shadows. My own son, my only child, the boy I raised alone after his father died, just planned my disappearance. I thought to myself, "All right, darling, we will do it your way." I retreated to my bedroom, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands trembled as I closed the door and sat on the edge of my bed in complete darkness. The words kept replaying in my mind. One-way ticket. Once she is gone, everything will be theirs. My name is Alina. I am 67 years old. I have lived in the same house in Connecticut for 42 years, the house my husband bought when Marcus was just a baby. When my husband died 3 years ago from cancer, I thought I had already experienced the worst pain life could throw at me. I was wrong. I sat there in the dark, forcing myself to think clearly. Marcus is 35 now, married to Jennifer for 4 years. Over the past 6 months, he had been pressuring me constantly to sign over power of attorney. He kept saying it would make things easier if I became ill, that it was just a precaution, that any responsible adult child would have this arrangement with their aging parent. I had resisted, something in my gut telling me to wait. Now I understood why he wanted it so desperately. Our family estate is worth approximately $3 million. My late husband was a successful doctor, and he invested wisely. Beyond the property, I have investment accounts totaling another $2 million. $5 million total. That is what my life is worth to my son. I could not sleep. At 3 a.m, I went to my home office and pulled out the cruise documents Marcus had given me 2 days earlier. The cruise was a 7-day Caribbean voyage, departing in 3 days on Sunday morning. I examined every page carefully under my desk lamp. The outbound ticket was there, properly printed and official, but when I looked for the return ticket, I found only a placeholder page with generic text about return arrangements. No actual ticket. New confirmation number. New date. I searched through all the papers 3 times. No return ticket anywhere. My hands were shaking as I set the documents down. This was real. This was actually happening. I waited until 4 a.m, when I knew Marcus and Jennifer would be deeply asleep in the guest wing they had been occupying for the past month. They said they were having their apartment renovated. Now I understood they had moved in to keep closer watch on me, to make sure I did not change my will or do anything that would interfere with their plans. I tiptoed down the hallway to Marcus's study. The door was unlocked. I slipped inside and carefully closed it behind me, not turning on the main light, using only the small flashlight from my phone. I searched his desk methodically, careful to leave everything exactly as I found it. In the bottom drawer, hidden under folders of what looked like ordinary household bills, I found a manila envelope. Inside was a life insurance policy in my name. $2 million. Beneficiary, Marcus Thompson. Date, 6 weeks ago. I stared at my signature at the bottom of the document. It looked exactly like mine. The loops, the slant, the way I crossed my T's. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never signed this paper. I had never even seen it before this moment. The policy was forged. I sat in the dark study, the pieces falling into place like a terrible puzzle. This was not just about getting rid of me so they could inherit the estate. This was about murder disguised as a vacation tragedy. They would claim I disappeared at sea, collect the $2 million insurance payout, inherit the $3 million estate, and the $2 million in investment accounts, and take control of everything. $7 million total. That is what my death is worth to them. Most mothers, discovering their son planned to murder them, would confront him immediately. They would call the police, cancel the cruise, cut off all contact. They would be driven by emotion, by hurt, by the desperate hope that it was all a misunderstanding. But I spent 40 years as a high school principal. I dealt with manipulative people every single day. Clever students who lied to my face, Parents who tried every trick to get their children out of consequences. Staff members who schemed behind my back. I learned to think strategically, to stay calm under pressure, to plan 3 steps ahead. Confronting Marcus directly would only make him change tactics. He would become more careful, harder to catch. He would adjust his plans, maybe wait a few months, try something different. And next time, I might not overhear the truth in time. No, I would play along. I would seem like the grateful, trusting mother, and I would outsmart them at every single turn. Over the next 2 days, I made quiet arrangements while acting completely normal around Marcus and Jennifer. On Friday morning, while they were out shopping, I called my longtime lawyer, Bernard, and told him everything. He was shocked and horrified. We drew up a new will immediately, leaving everything to several charities I had supported for years, nothing to Marcus. I set up what Bernard called a dead man's switch with my best friend Margaret. If I did not call her with a specific code phrase by day 6 of the cruise, she would take a sealed envelope of evidence directly to the FBI field office. I bought a small recording device online, paying extra for overnight delivery. I researched maritime law and insurance fraud, taking notes like I was preparing for a final exam. I transferred all my account access codes and passwords to a safety deposit box at a bank Marcus did not know existed, and I acted completely normal. I hugged Marcus when he came home. I thanked him repeatedly for the generous gift, saying how much I needed the rest, how thoughtful he was to arrange everything. Jennifer smiled that cold smile of hers and said she just wanted me to be happy and relaxed. On Saturday morning, departure day -1, Jennifer kept insisting she wanted to organize my medications for the trip. She followed me around the house, offering to pack my pill organizers, saying she wanted to make sure I had everything I needed for 7 days. I realized she might be planning to switch my blood pressure medication for something harmful, or add pills that would make me confused and disoriented. I politely but firmly declined, saying I had already organized everything myself the night before, that I had been managing my own medications for 3 years since my husband died, that I appreciated her concern, but I had it handled. She looked frustrated, but could not push harder without seeming suspicious. That afternoon, as we sat in the living room discussing last-minute cruise details, I noticed Marcus and Jennifer exchange a meaningful look. Jennifer touched her stomach gently and smiled at Marcus. He smiled back and squeezed her hand. My heart sank. Jennifer was pregnant, or she was pretending to be. Either way, they needed money urgently. A baby meant expenses, a bigger home, a different lifestyle. My $5 million would fund their dream life. And I was just an obstacle in their way, an old woman taking up space and resources that should belong to them and their growing family. This made them even more dangerous. Desperate people do desperate things. Sunday morning arrived. Marcus and Jennifer drove me to the cruise port in New York. The drive took 2 hours. Jennifer chattered the whole time about how wonderful the cruise would be, how I deserved this break, how she wished she could come along. But of course she had to work, and besides, I needed time to myself. Marcus kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I smiled at him, my boy, my only child, and wondered how it had come to this. We arrived at the terminal at 10 in the morning. The ship was massive, towering above the dock like a floating city. Marcus helped me with my luggage. Jennifer hugged me tightly at the gangway, whispering in my ear that I should have the most wonderful, peaceful time, that I should not worry about anything back home, that everything would be taken care of. The subtext was clear. Everything would be taken care of, including me. Marcus hugged me last. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Hesitation? But then it was gone, replaced by that same cold determination I had heard in his voice on the phone. They waved as I walked up the gangway. I waved back, my heart breaking into pieces I did not think could break any smaller. I was walking onto a ship where people were planning to kill me, and I was doing it on purpose. Because the only way to stop them permanently was to let them try and fail, to gather evidence, to catch them in the act. I was using myself as bait. The ship was more enormous than I had imagined, 8 decks, restaurants and theaters and pools and shops. Thousands of passengers boarding, families with excited children, couples holding hands, retirees in matching vacation outfits. Everyone happy and carefree. I checked into my cabin on deck 5, a modest interior room with no window. I unpacked carefully, hiding my recording device in the bottom of my purse, making sure the battery was fully charged. That evening at the welcome dinner in the main dining hall, I sat at an assigned table with 7 other passengers. I was making small talk with a retired teacher from Ohio when a woman approached our table. She was in her mid-40s, attractive, with a too bright smile and overly friendly demeanor. She wore a staff uniform with a name tag that read, Patricia, Activity Director. She zeroed in on me immediately. You must be Alina. Your son called ahead and asked us to take special care of you. He said you have been through a difficult time and need extra attention. My skin crawled. Marcus had planted someone on the ship. Patricia sat down in the empty chair next to me, uninvited. She started asking questions, very specific questions. How was my health? What medications did I take? Did I sleep well? Did I have any family traveling with me? Was I feeling stable emotionally after my husband's death? I gave vague, pleasant answers, my instincts screaming that something was wrong. Patricia kept suggesting I try the special beverage service, a complimentary wellness program for senior passengers. She brought me several glasses of a greenish smoothie throughout the evening, saying it was full of vitamins and minerals, perfect for older travelers who needed extra nutrition. I pretended to drink them, but discreetly dumped the liquid into the potted plants near our table when Patricia looked away. By the end of dinner, I had befriended another solo passenger, a dignified gentleman in his early 70s named Harold. He was from Boston, traveling alone after his wife's death 2 years ago. We bonded over our shared loss and our love of history. He asked if I would like company for the shore excursions. I accepted gratefully, relieved to have safety in numbers. The ship left port at 11 that night. I stood on the deck and watched the lights of New York fade into the distance. I was truly alone now, surrounded by water in every direction, with no way off until we reached land again in 4 days. On day 2, I explored the ship, trying to learn the layout, identifying exits and cameras and crew areas. I passed by a restricted crew section around noon and heard a familiar voice. Patricia was on her phone, laughing. Do not worry, Marcus. I told you I would take care of everything. For $50,000, I will make sure it happens exactly as we discussed. You just make sure my payment clears by Friday. I ducked behind a maintenance door, my heart racing. Patricia knew Marcus. I searched my memory frantically. Then it hit me. 20 years ago, when Marcus was 15, and in his sophomore year of college, he brought a girlfriend home for Thanksgiving break. Her name was Patricia. She was studying hospitality management at a college in Florida. I remembered her clearly now. Cold eyes behind a warm smile. Calculating. Always watching. Always assessing. She had made me uncomfortable even then. Marcus broke up with her after that semester, or so I thought. But they had stayed in contact all these years, or Marcus had reconnected with her specifically for this plot. She worked on this cruise line. She probably helped him choose which ship, which week, which sailing. She was being paid $50,000 to ensure something happened to me at sea. I returned to my cabin and sat on the bed, forcing myself to think clearly. I was on a ship with at least one person actively trying to kill me, probably more. I could not trust the crew. I could not trust the ship's security. I could not leave until we reached port. That night at dinner, something terrible happened. Harold and I were seated at the same table, enjoying our meal and conversation. He was telling me a funny story about his grandchildren, when suddenly he stopped mid-sentence. His face went pale. He clutched his stomach and gasped. Then he collapsed forward onto the table, plates and glasses crashing to the floor. Medical staff rushed over within seconds. They carried Harold away on a stretcher while passengers around us gasped and whispered. The head waiter announced it appeared to be severe food poisoning and assured everyone the rest of the food was perfectly safe. But I knew better. Harold and I had switched plates at the last minute because he wanted to try my salmon instead of his steak. The poison had been meant for me. I spent the rest of the evening in my cabin, door locked, trying not to panic. On the morning of day 3, I received a ship-to-shore phone call. It was Bernard's assistant, a young woman named Lisa. She was crying. Bernard's law office had burned down the night before. Complete destruction. Every file, every document, every computer. The new will I had signed, the evidence package I had left, all of it was gone. Investigators suspected arson but had no proof. Bernard himself was fine. He had not been in the office, but everything was destroyed. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence. Marcus had people working for him on land too. He was eliminating every trace of my protective measures. He was covering all his bases, removing every backup plan I had made. I was truly alone now. Alone on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, surrounded by people who wanted me dead, with no safety net left. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt genuine fear grip my chest and squeeze. Harold remained in the medical bay, unconscious and barely clinging to life. I visited him on the morning of day 3, but the ship's doctor would not let me into the room. Instead, a stern man in his 50s named Dr. Raymond pulled me aside in the hallway. He told me Harold's condition was critical. They might need to evacuate him by helicopter to a hospital in Bermuda if he did not improve within 24 hours. Then Dr. Raymond suggested, strongly, that I take preventive medication since I had shared a table with Harold. Food poisoning could spread, he said. He pulled out a small bottle of pills and shook 2 into his palm, holding them out to me. Something in his eyes made me hesitate. He was too insistent, too forceful. I declined, saying I had a very sensitive stomach and preferred to wait and see how I felt. He pushed harder, saying it was irresponsible to risk my health. I held firm, finally saying I would think about it and come back later if I changed my mind. He looked frustrated, but let me leave. I went back to my cabin and sat on the bed, my mind racing. Dr. Raymond was part of this. The ship's doctor was part of the conspiracy. That meant I could not trust medical help if something happened to me. I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. On day 4, I knew I needed evidence. Without proof, no one would believe me. An old woman making wild accusations against her son would just seem paranoid and delusional. I waited until evening, when Patricia was leading a dance class on the upper deck. I checked to make sure she was occupied. Then I made my way to the crew quarters. I had studied the ship's layout obsessively. I knew which cabin was Patricia's based on a crew roster I had seen posted near the staff break room. My hands shook as I tried the door. Locked. But these cabin locks were simple. I pulled out a credit card and slid it into the gap, wiggling and pushing until I heard the click. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. Patricia's cabin was small and cramped, barely bigger than a closet. I searched quickly but methodically. Drawers, closet, under the bed, behind the bathroom mirror. In a locked drawer in her small desk, I found it, a folder with my name on the tab. Inside were printed emails between Patricia and Marcus, going back 3 months. My hands shook as I read them. The plan was laid out in horrifying detail. Marcus had paid Patricia $50,000, half up front, half when the job was complete. The plan was to drug me heavily on night 5, then stage my falling overboard around 2 in the morning when deck cameras had a known blind spot near the aft railing on deck 7. It would be ruled a tragic accident. An elderly woman, possibly confused or disoriented, wandering at night. These things happened occasionally on cruises, sad but not suspicious. But there was more. Patricia had done this before. 2 years ago, an elderly passenger fell overboard on Patricia's watch. The family was devastated but grateful for Patricia's compassionate handling of the situation. They gave her a huge bonus, almost $100,000. The incident was investigated briefly, but ruled accidental. No charges were ever filed. Patricia had found a lucrative side business. Families who wanted their elderly relatives to disappear hired her. She made it look like accidents. I felt sick reading the emails. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. My own cell phone was in Patricia's drawer. The phone I thought I had misplaced on day one. I turned it on. The battery was almost dead, but I could see the sent messages. They had been texting Marcus from my phone for 3 days, pretending to be me. Messages saying how happy I was, how peaceful I felt, how the ocean made everything seem so clear, how I finally understood what I needed to do. They were building a narrative, a depressed widow who seemed happy but was actually planning to harm herself. When I went overboard, it would not just be an accident, it would be a suspected suicide. The grieving son would say his mother had been depressed since his father's death, that he sent her on the cruise hoping it would help, but sadly she was too far gone to save. The perfect cover story. I quickly took photos of everything with the recording device, making sure to capture clear images of the emails and the phone. Then, I saw the final document in the folder. A passenger manifest for an emergency boarding at the next port. Tomorrow morning, the ship would dock in Grand Cayman for a brief 4-hour stop. 2 passengers were registered to board mid-cruise: Marcus Thompson and Jennifer Thompson. My son and daughter-in-law were coming onto the ship. They were joining the cruise tomorrow. They were coming to make sure the job got done personally, probably because Patricia's poisoning attempt had failed when Harold ate my food. I carefully put everything back exactly as I had found it, locked the drawer, and left the cabin. I walked back to my room in a daze. They would be here tomorrow. Marcus and Jennifer would be on this ship with me, with Patricia, with Dr. Raymond. I would be completely surrounded by people trying to kill me. If I tried to leave the ship tomorrow when we docked, they would be there waiting. If I stayed on the ship, I would be trapped with all of them. I could not trust ship security because they might be paid off too. I had no evidence anymore because Bernard's office burned down. The photos on my recording device were something, but they could be explained away as fabrications, as an old woman's paranoid delusions. That night, lying in my cabin with the door locked and a chair wedged under the handle, I felt terror like I had never known. Real, suffocating terror that made it hard to breathe. I was 73 years old, alone on a ship in the middle of the ocean, and tomorrow my son was coming to kill me. The ship docked in Grand Cayman at 8 in the morning on day 4. I stood at my cabin window, watching through the small porthole as the island came into view. Beautiful white beaches, turquoise water, palm trees swaying in the breeze, paradise, and possibly the last place I would ever see. I watched passengers disembarking for shore excursions, laughing and excited. I saw Marcus and Jennifer boarding up the gangway with luggage, waving and smiling at crew members like they were just happy tourists joining mid-cruise. Jennifer was wearing a flowing dress that concealed her stomach. The pregnancy performance continued. My hands were shaking. I had 2 choices: try to escape on the island and get to local authorities, or stay on the ship and face what was coming. I chose escape. It was my only chance. I grabbed my purse with my passport and the recording device, put on my shoes and headed for the exit. My cabin was on deck 5. I had to go up to deck 7 to reach the gangway. I made it to deck 6 before Patricia appeared. She was with 2 large men in crew uniforms, both wearing security badges. She smiled that bright, fake smile. "Alina, there you are. Marcus arranged a special private excursion for you as a surprise. All prepaid, very exclusive. These gentlemen will escort you to the tour van." I stopped walking. "Thank you, but I would prefer to explore on my own today." Patricia's smile tightened. "Marcus was very specific. He wants you to have the best experience. Please, let us take care of you." The 2 men moved closer, flanking me on either side. Other passengers walked past, oblivious. To them, it just looked like staff helping an elderly passenger. I tried to move past them toward the gangway. One of the men put a firm hand on my arm. Not rough enough to cause a scene, but strong enough to stop me. "Ma'am, the van is this way," he said. They were not asking. They were telling me. They guided me down the gangway and across the dock to a remote area where cruise tour vans were parked. But we walked past all the official tour vans full of passengers. We kept walking to a corner of the parking area, where a single white van sat alone. No tour company logo, No other tourists. No witnesses. My heart was pounding. This was not a tour. This was an abduction. They were taking me somewhere isolated to finish the job on land where it would be easier and cleaner. One of the men opened the van's sliding door. The interior was dark and empty. I made a split-second decision. As the man reached to help me into the van, I screamed, a loud, piercing scream that echoed across the parking area. "Help! I am being kidnapped. Help me! Someone help!" I dropped to the ground, making myself a dead weight, and kept screaming. Port workers nearby turned and looked. Passengers in the distance stopped and stared. The two men froze, not knowing what to do. They could not force me into the van now without causing a massive scene. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I ran as fast as my 73-year-old legs would carry me, weaving between parked cars, heading toward the main terminal building where crowds of people were walking. I heard shouting behind me. I did not look back. I just ran. I made it to the terminal building and pushed through the doors. Inside, I found signs pointing to the Port Authority office. I followed them, gasping for breath, my chest burning. The police station was in a small building next to the main terminal. I burst through the door and collapsed against the desk, wheezing. A uniformed officer looked up in surprise. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I need help," I gasped. "People are trying to kill me. My son is part of a conspiracy. I am in danger. Please, you have to help me." The officer stood up, concerned. He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes. "Slow down, ma'am. What happened?" I tried to explain. The cruise, the overheard phone call, the one-way ticket, the insurance fraud, Patricia, the poisoning, the abduction attempt. The words tumbled out in a frantic rush. The officer listened, his expression slowly changing from concern to something else. Pity. He thought I was confused. "Ma'am, do you have any proof of these accusations?" I reached into my purse for my recording device. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Before I could pull it out, the door opened. Dr. Raymond walked in, wearing his ship's medical uniform, looking professional and concerned. "There she is," he said with relief. "Thank goodness you found her, officer. We have been searching everywhere." 20 minutes later, Marcus and Jennifer arrived. They played their roles perfectly. Marcus, with tears in his eyes, explained to the police that his mother had been experiencing memory problems and paranoid delusions for months. That was why they sent her on the cruise, hoping rest and relaxation would help. That was why they decided to join her halfway through, to check on her and make sure she was safe. He showed the police text messages supposedly from me, messages I never sent, expressing confusion and fear and disorientation, all fabricated from the phone Patricia stole from me. Jennifer sobbed convincingly, saying she loved me like her own mother, that they were so worried about my declining mental state, that they were considering placing me in a memory care facility when we got home. Dr. Raymond produced medical records from the ship, falsified documents showing my erratic behavior, my refusal to take necessary medications, my confusion and agitation. The police officer looked at me with sympathy. An elderly woman, disheveled and frightened, making wild accusations with no proof. A loving son and daughter-in-law, worried and concerned. A ship's doctor with official medical documentation. He believed them. They released me into Marcus's custody. As we walked back toward the ship, Jennifer on one side and Marcus on the other, Marcus leaned close and whispered in my ear, "I filed emergency power of attorney papers in Connecticut this morning. Dr. Raymond's medical assessment is the supporting evidence. A judge will probably grant it within 48 hours. Then everything will be mine legally. You are not just physically trapped, Mom. You are legally trapped too." The implications crashed over me. With power of attorney, he could control my bank accounts, sell my property, make medical decisions for me. And they had established me as mentally incompetent. Anything I said now would be dismissed as the ramblings of a confused old woman with dementia. That evening, after the ship left port and we were back at sea, Marcus and Jennifer came to my cabin. They locked the door behind them. They were not pretending anymore. Marcus looked at me with cold, empty eyes. You should have just signed everything over when I asked nicely. Now it has to be this way. Jennifer stepped forward. Tomorrow night, night 5, you are going to tragically fall overboard during a confused state. By the time anyone realizes you are missing, you will be miles behind us. The ocean is very big, Alina. They will search for a day or two, but they will never find a body. You will just be another sad statistic. Elderly passenger lost at sea. I tried to speak, to argue, to appeal to whatever humanity might be left in my son. Marcus, please. I am your mother. I raised you. I loved you. Your father would be ashamed of what you have become. His expression did not change. You were always so proud of being strong and independent. Guess what, Mom? You are not strong. You are just old, and old people die. That is how life works, Jennifer added, almost cheerfully. We already have buyers for the estate. The money will be transferred to offshore accounts. In 6 months, we will be living in Italy with our baby, starting fresh. No more debts, no more struggling, just the life we deserve. Please, I whispered. You are already dead, Marcus said flatly. You just do not know it yet. They left. I heard the lock click behind them. I sat on my cabin bed in the darkness, listening to the hum of the ship's engines. I had less than 24 hours to live. No one believed me. I had no help. I was old, tired, and completely surrounded by enemies who had thought of everything. This was my lowest point. The moment I truly believed I might not survive. Day 5 arrived. I went through the motions like a ghost. I attended breakfast in the dining hall, barely tasting my food. Other passengers chatted happily around me, completely unaware that one of their fellow travelers was counting down her final hours. Patricia watched me from across the room, her eyes never leaving me for long. Dr. Raymond appeared at my table, asking again if I wanted preventive medication. I declined. He frowned but walked away. Marcus and Jennifer lounged by the pool on deck 9, sipping tropical drinks, looking like any other young couple on vacation. Jennifer rubbed her stomach occasionally, performing her pregnancy for anyone watching. I spent the afternoon wandering the ship, trying to think of a solution, any solution, but every option led to the same dead end. I could not get off the ship. I could not call for help. I could not trust anyone. I had no evidence that would be believed. At 4 in the afternoon, I was walking past the crew quarters when I saw a man in an engineering uniform taking a smoke break outside a restricted door. His name tag read Gary. I had seen him before, noticed him because he was always kind to passengers, helping elderly people carry heavy bags or find their way around the ship. He had worked on cruise ships for decades. I had overheard him tell another passenger. I made a desperate decision. I approached him and said quietly, I need to ask you something. It is going to sound crazy, but I need you to listen. He looked at me curiously. Sure, ma'am. What is it? I need to send an urgent message to the United States Coast Guard. A distress message. I do not have much time to explain, but people on this ship are planning to kill me tonight. His expression shifted from curiosity to concern. Ma'am, that is a serious accusation. I know how it sounds, but please, just listen for 2 minutes. That is all I ask. Something in my eyes must have convinced him. He stubbed out his cigarette and said, All right, 2 minutes. I told him everything, speaking quickly but clearly. The overheard phone call, the one-way ticket, the forged insurance policy, Patricia's connection to Marcus, the poisoning attempt on Harold, the text messages sent from my stolen phone, the abduction attempt in Grand Cayman, Marcus and Jennifer's threat last night. Gary listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Patricia, I have suspected her for years. My heart leaped. What do you mean? 2 years ago, an elderly passenger fell overboard on Patricia's watch. Rich lady, traveling alone, no family on the cruise with her. Patricia was the last person seen with her. The woman's family sent Patricia a huge bonus for handling everything so compassionately. but I always thought it was suspicious. The woman was healthy, stable, no signs of depression or confusion. Then suddenly she just falls overboard in the middle of the night? And Patricia gets a six-figure payout from the grateful family? He shook his head. It was investigated briefly but ruled accidental. Patricia got promoted, but I never believed it. "Will you help me?" I asked. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "What do you need?" I showed him the recording device hidden in my purse. "I bought this before the cruise. I have been recording conversations. I have Patricia talking about being paid by Marcus. I have Marcus and Jennifer threatening me. I need to send these files to the Coast Guard and to my lawyer." Gary looked at the device, then back at me. "The communications room. We can upload the files from there and send them encrypted. Come on, we need to do this now before Patricia realizes where you are." We went to the communications room on Deck 3, a restricted area for crew only. Gary used his access card to unlock the door. I was so focused on the computer, on uploading the recordings, that I did not hear the door open behind us. Jennifer's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Looking for this?" I spun around. Jennifer stood in the doorway, holding my recording device. She must have followed us. She must have seen everything. Before Gary could react, Jennifer grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount and swung it with shocking force into the side of his head. Gary collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. He did not move. Jennifer calmly picked up my recording device from where I had set it on the desk. She smiled at me, that cold smile I had come to know so well. "You really thought you were clever, did not you? The brave old woman who was going to outsmart everyone." She turned the device over in her hands, examining it. Then she dropped it on the floor and smashed it under her heel, grinding it into pieces. "Let me tell you the truth, Alina. Marcus is weak. He never had the courage for this. I planned everything. I contacted Patricia. I arranged the fake insurance policy. I manipulated Marcus into believing this was necessary, that you were standing in the way of our happiness." She stepped closer. "You know what your estate and insurance and investments total? $7 million. Do you know what Marcus makes at his job? $45,000 a year? Do you know how we live? In a cramped apartment with noisy neighbors and broken appliances. Do you know what I deserve? Better. So much better." "The baby," I whispered. Jennifer laughed. "There is no baby." I lied. I needed Marcus desperate. Needed him to think we were running out of time. Men are so easy to manipulate when you tell them they are going to be fathers. She pulled a small bottle from her pocket. "I put this in your dinner 2 hours ago. It is a slow-acting poison that mimics heart failure. You will start feeling symptoms soon. Dizziness, heart palpitations, nausea, confusion. In about 2 hours, you will have what appears to be a cardiac event. You will become disoriented, wander onto the deck, and tragically fall overboard. Dr. Raymond is ready to pronounce the cause of death as natural cardiac arrest before the fall. An unfortunate medical emergency." I felt it then. A strange flutter in my chest. Lightheadedness. Oh God, it was real. I was poisoned. "Marcus will finally be free of you," Jennifer said. "And I will finally have the life I was meant to live." She walked to the door, then turned back. "You are going to die tonight, Alina, and there is nothing you can do to stop it." She left, locking the door from the outside. I stood there, trapped in the communications room, with an unconscious, possibly dying Gary, poisoned, all evidence destroyed, hours from death. I had been completely outmaneuvered. I was going to die. This was the absolute lowest point, the darkest hour, the moment when defeat seemed inevitable. I leaned against the wall, my heart fluttering irregularly in my chest. The poison was working. I could feel it moving through my system, making my hands tingle, making my vision blur slightly at the edges. But I was not dead yet, and I was not defeated yet. Jennifer thought she had destroyed all my evidence. She thought she had covered every angle, but she did not know about the package I had given to Margaret before leaving for the cruise. Margaret, my best friend of 40 years, the woman who was like a sister to me. I had given her a sealed envelope with explicit instructions. If I did not call her with a specific code phrase by the morning of day 6, she must immediately take the package to the FBI field office in Hartford. Inside that package were copies of everything. The forged insurance policy, bank records showing Marcus's financial desperation, Patricia's connection to Marcus from 20 years ago, documented history of all my concerns, instructions for where to find additional evidence. And I had not called Margaret, because I could not, which meant tomorrow morning she would open that package and take it to the FBI. But I needed to survive the next few hours to see that happen. I looked at Gary, unconscious on the floor, blood matting his hair. I checked his pulse. Still alive, but barely. He needed medical attention urgently. But more importantly, I remembered something. Before Jennifer arrived, Gary had accessed the communication system. I looked at the computer screen. The system was still logged in. My hands shaking from the poison, I used the radio system to send a distress signal with the ship's coordinates. I kept it vague, just an emergency code that would be picked up by Coast Guard monitoring stations. Then I used the emergency phone in the communications room to call Margaret's number. My fingers could barely dial. The phone rang 4 times. Please answer. Please answer. Please. Hello? Margaret's voice, scared and worried. The roses are blooming early this year, I gasped, using our agreed code phrase. Alina. Oh, thank God. I have been frantic. Are you all right? Listen carefully. I do not have much time. Did you open the package? Yes, yesterday. I had a terrible feeling. I could not wait. I took everything to the FBI in Hartford 2 days ago. My heart, even with poison flowing through it, surged with hope. What did they say? They opened an investigation immediately. They contacted the Coast Guard. Alina, the Coast Guard has been tracking your ship for the past 24 hours. A cutter is being dispatched. They will arrive by morning. The ship is being ordered to divert to Miami instead of Nassau. Help was coming. Help was actually coming. I am poisoned, I told her. Jennifer poisoned my dinner. I have maybe 2 hours before it gets worse. I need to stay alive until the Coast Guard arrives. Oh my God, Alina. What do I do? Nothing. You already did it. You saved my life. I love you. I love you too. Stay alive. Please stay alive. I hung up and sat down heavily on the floor next to Gary. I was dizzy, nauseous, my heart doing strange things in my chest. But I knew something Jennifer did not know. My late husband was a doctor. Before he died, before the cancer took him, he taught me about various poisons and their antidotes. It was morbid knowledge, but he said someday it might save my life. He taught me about slow-acting cardiac poisons, specifically because he worried about me as I got older, worried I might be vulnerable. I had been taking activated charcoal tablets secretly for days, anticipating a poisoning attempt. Activated charcoal binds to many toxins and prevents absorption. It was not foolproof, but it helped. And after dinner tonight, I had felt a strange tingling in my mouth. I recognized it immediately from my husband's descriptions. I had gone to my cabin bathroom and forced myself to vomit, emptying my stomach as much as possible, reducing how much poison my body could absorb. I was sick, but I was not dying. Not yet. Not if I could hold on a few more hours. I made a decision. I would use myself as bait one final time. I would let them think the poison was working. I would lure Marcus, Jennifer, Patricia, and Dr. Raymond into revealing themselves completely, with witnesses, with the Coast Guard listening. I checked the communications room computer. Gary's distress signal had been received. Multiple responses were coming in, asking for details of the emergency. I left the communications room, making sure to leave Gary where other crew members would eventually find him. I could not help him right now without blowing my cover. But once this was over, he would get medical attention. I staggered toward the upper deck, deliberately appearing disoriented and sick, which was not hard, because I actually was disoriented and sick. But I exaggerated it, stumbling against walls, holding my chest, mumbling to myself, Marcus saw me first on deck 8. He immediately alerted Jennifer through a text message. Within minutes, they were both following me at a distance. I made my way to deck 10, the highest passenger deck, where the aft railing looked out over the dark ocean. It was 11 at night. Most passengers were at the evening shows or in the casino. This section of deck was nearly empty. Patricia appeared from a side corridor, right on schedule. Dr. Raymond came from the other direction. They surrounded me at the railing. The 4 conspirators, Marcus, Jennifer, Patricia, Dr. Raymond, all of them thinking they had won, thinking I was minutes from death. I leaned heavily against the railing, appearing barely conscious. The dark ocean stretched endlessly below, the perfect murder scene. Marcus stepped forward. "I am sorry, Mom, but this is how it has to end." Jennifer moved closer to push me over the railing, ready to complete the plan. Then I stood up straight, suddenly alert. I pulled a second recording device from my jacket pocket, the backup device I had bought before the cruise specifically for this moment. "You are all under arrest," I said clearly, my voice strong despite the poison in my system. They laughed. I was one old woman. Marcus reached for the device. Then a massive spotlight hit the deck from above. A Coast Guard helicopter hovered overhead, the sound of its rotors deafening. Armed officers began rappelling down ropes to the deck. The ship's captain appeared with 6 security officers, responding to Gary's earlier distress signal. And then Harold walked onto the deck from the interior corridor. Harold, who had supposedly been poisoned and unconscious for days. He was perfectly healthy, and he was holding up an FBI badge. "FBI Agent Harold Morrison," he announced. "All of you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Marcus tried to run. A Coast Guard officer tackled him immediately. Jennifer screamed that this was all a misunderstanding, that I was confused, that I had dementia. But Harold pulled out his own recording device. He had been recording everything since day 1. Every suspicious interaction, every poisoning attempt, everything. Gary had regained consciousness and recovered enough to send backup files to the ship's computer system before Jennifer destroyed my device. The evidence was uploaded and transmitted to the FBI and Coast Guard. Patricia tried to blend in with arriving passengers, but Harold identified her immediately. "Doctor." Raymond claimed he was just following medical protocol, but his falsified records in connection to Patricia proved otherwise. Coast Guard officers and FBI agents swarmed the deck. They found Patricia's folder in her cabin, found the payment records, found the printed emails with Marcus. They found Dr. Raymond's fake medical reports in his office. They found evidence of the arson at Bernard's office, traced back to a man Marcus had hired. They found the forged insurance policy hidden in Marcus's cabin luggage. As Marcus was handcuffed, I walked up to him slowly. The poison was still in my system, making me weak, but I refused to collapse until this moment was complete. "You wanted me gone?" I said quietly. "I am not going anywhere. But you are taking a very long trip. Federal prison. Maritime murder conspiracy carries a minimum of 25 years. You will be 60 years old when you get out. If you get out." I turned to Jennifer. "You called me an obstacle standing in the way of the life you deserved. Turns out, you were right. I was an obstacle to your evil plan, and obstacles do not move. They stop things dead in their tracks." To Patricia and Dr. Raymond, I said, "You made a business out of murdering elderly people. That ends tonight." As they were led away in handcuffs, I stood on the deck, wrapped in a blanket that a Coast Guard officer had placed around my shoulders. The ship's medical staff, the real medical staff who were not part of the conspiracy, treated me for the poison. The antidote was administered. I would be sick for days, but I would survive. I stood there and watched the sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean. I had survived. I had won. 2 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse in Miami, watching the verdicts being read. The trial had been heavily covered by national media. Elderly woman outsmarts son's cruise murder plot became the headline story across the country. Reporters camped outside my house in Connecticut. I gave one interview to a major news network, telling my story calmly and completely. After that, I declined all other media requests, but I attended every day of the trial. I looked Marcus in the eye every single morning when he was brought into the courtroom in handcuffs. I wanted him to see me alive, healthy, and stronger than ever. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the financial documents, the emails, the testimony from Harold and Gary, the forensic evidence from Bernard's burned office. There was no defense. Marcus Thompson, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, attempted murder, insurance fraud. Sentence, 25 years in federal prison. Jennifer Thompson, first-degree conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, attempted murder, insurance fraud. As the admitted mastermind, her sentence was 30 years in federal prison. Patricia Miller, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, accessory to attempted murder, maritime law violations. The investigation into the death of the elderly passenger 2 years ago led to additional murder charges. Sentence, 28 years in federal prison. Dr. Raymond Chen, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, falsifying medical records, accessory to attempted murder. Sentence, 15 years in federal prison. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement at sentencing, I stood up and faced them all. Your Honor, when my son first threatened me, when I overheard his plan to make me disappear, I promised myself something. I promised that he would regret this decision 3 times over. I would like to explain those 3 regrets to the court. The judge nodded. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Regret number 1, I said. They wanted to make me disappear from their lives permanently. They planned my death down to the smallest detail. Instead, they are the ones who disappeared. They will spend decades behind bars, their lives erased from society, their freedom gone, while I continue living my life fully and freely. That is the first regret. I looked at Jennifer. Regret number 2. My son destroyed his relationship with his mother, committed terrible crimes, and threw away his freedom because Jennifer told him she was pregnant. She convinced him they desperately needed money for their baby, for their growing family. It was all a lie. Jennifer was never pregnant. She admitted to me that she faked the pregnancy to manipulate Marcus, to make him desperate enough to follow her plan. He lost everything for a baby that never existed. That is the second regret. I turned to Marcus. His face was pale, stricken. He had not known about Jennifer's lie until this moment. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. Regret number 3, I continued. They committed these crimes to get my estate, my insurance money, my investments. $7 million total. That was the price they put on my life. But instead of gaining $7 million, all their assets have been seized by the court. They face massive restitution payments they will never be able to fulfill. They are penniless prisoners. Meanwhile, I still have everything. I am a wealthy, free woman. They wanted my money. Instead, they lost theirs and I kept mine. That is the third regret. I sat back down. The judge sentenced them immediately. As the bailiffs led them away, Marcus looked back at me one last time. I saw it then. The full weight of what he had done. The realization that his mother, the woman who raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him, was the person who defeated him. The understanding that he had destroyed his entire life for a lie and a greed that left him with nothing. I did not look away. I held his gaze until he disappeared through the door. I have not spoken to Marcus since. He sends letters from prison, begging for forgiveness, saying he was manipulated, saying he never stopped loving me. I do not open them. I have instructed my lawyer to return them unopened. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned forever. Some things cannot be forgiven. He made his choice. Now he lives with it. I used some of the seized assets and the substantial settlement money from the cruise line to establish the Silver Shield Foundation. It is dedicated to preventing elder abuse and protecting seniors from financial exploitation. We work with law enforcement, provide legal resources to elderly victims, and conduct education programs about the warning signs of elder abuse. I became an advocate, speaking at conferences, working with prosecutors who handle elder abuse cases. I tell my story not for sympathy, but as a warning, as proof that we are not easy victims. 6 months after the trial ended, I went on another cruise. A real vacation this time. Margaret came with me. We sailed through the Mediterranean for 2 weeks. We laughed, we drank wine, we danced at the evening shows. I felt more alive than I had in years. One evening, standing on the deck watching the sunset over the Greek islands, Margaret asked me if I ever think about Marcus. Every day, I told her honestly. I think about how I gave him life, how I raised him alone after his father died, how I worked 2 jobs to put him through college, how I sacrificed everything for his happiness, and how he tried to murder me for money. Yes, I think about that. Do you forgive him? I was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun sink into the Mediterranean Sea. No, some things cannot be forgiven. Some wounds are too deep to heal. He chose greed and murder over his own mother. He destroyed our relationship himself. He does not get my forgiveness now. He does not deserve peace. Marcus will be 70 years old if he serves his full sentence. An old man released into a world that has moved on without him. No family waiting. No mother to welcome him home. Nothing but the memory of his crimes and the weight of his choices. That is justice. I am 73 years old now. I sold the Connecticut estate. Too many bad memories in those walls. I bought a smaller but beautiful house near the coast in Maine. I can see the ocean from my bedroom window. Every morning, I watch the sunrise over the water, and I am grateful. I volunteer with the Silver Shield Foundation full-time now. We have helped over 200 elderly victims in the past year. We have stopped financial abuse. We have prosecuted criminals. We have protected people who cannot protect themselves. I have new friends, people who care about me for who I am, not what I have. I have purpose. I have peace. They thought that cruise was supposed to be my end. Marcus planned my death down to the last detail, but instead, it became my rebirth. I discovered strength I did not know I still possessed. I found courage I thought had faded with age. I proved to myself and to the world that being older does not mean being weak. Marcus tried to take my life. Instead, he gave me a reason to live it more fully than ever. That one-way ticket he bought me? It was not one way at all. It was a round trip. I came back, stronger, wiser, victorious, and I am not going anywhere. Not for a long, long time. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Did you find the strength to fight back, or did you walk away? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that age is not weakness but accumulated wisdom and strength, please like this video. Subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and triumph. And share this with someone who needs to be reminded that they are stronger than they think, that no matter what challenges they face, they have the power to overcome. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope my experience gives you strength for whatever battles you are fighting in your own life. Remember, you are not alone. You are not weak. You are a survivor. Take care of yourselves. Protect yourselves. Trust your instincts. And never, ever let anyone make you believe that your age makes you an easy target. Until next time, stay strong, stay vigilant, and keep fighting for the life you deserve.